Past Lives is a beautiful and slow moving movie that reminds you that love is often a series of decisions that inspire feelings instead of the other way around. To summarize the film, for over 24 years, Hae Sung and Nora Moon have been in and out of each other's lives. They met when they both were 12, and then Nora Moon's parents immigrated to Canada, and then they reconnect 12 years later after Nora moves to New York while Hae Sung is still in Korea. Their connection is complicated. They're separated by an ocean, yet there's this intense feeling between them that makes it so that they can't let each other go, but as it becomes clear that neither one is willing to uplift their whole life for the other, so comes another 12 years passing before they speak again. And at that time, Nora is married to a man named Arthur. Hae Sung is fresh out of a breakup, and it seems they're finally at that point where they're not going to have an ellipsis when it comes to what can be or what is. Instead, they're going to have one of those type of conversations which may finally give themselves closure, though whether or not that closure may lead to them dishonoring their partners or who they are, never mind leaving someone heartbroken, it's hard to say. So as for why Past Lives is rated PG-13, it's because it's cussing throughout, mostly in Korean. There's no violence, surprisingly no sex, but there is depiction of smoking and drinking. So one of the main things that we love about this film is that it really makes you think about connection. It makes you think about connection in a way of the awkwardness and vulnerability that comes from just meeting someone's eyes for just a second and it feeling so much like a violation that you have to turn away. Yet when we see Nora and Hae Sung, I'm supposed to say his full name or just his first name? I don't know. Either way, when you see those two meet eyes and hold each other's glances, it's this weird combination of vulnerability, possibilities, yet there's also a sense of frustration and sometimes confusion. For when you think about it, depending on the culture, looking into someone's eyes can either be seen as disrespectful or the most respectful thing you can do. In Western culture, sign of respect. Look me in the eyes when you're talking to me. Lets me know you're not lying to me, and a slew of other things. In some Eastern cultures, if I recall correctly from school, it's considered disrespectful since similar to when you're looking at an animal, or another type of animal that is, it's, what is it called? It's an act that can be seen as you trying to dominate somebody or intimidate them. And because of the way that Nora and Hae Sung's relationship is, since they were very much competitors when they were 12, but then things evolved, you get these different feelings and reactions as they look into each other's eyes. And even when Nora smiles at him, it's almost like, I got you. Yet at the same time, because she continues the conversation and sometimes initiates it, there's this question of, does she really have him in a way that she thinks she does? Is he simply a piece of nostalgia, something that she wants in her future, and that's why she can't let this go? And I would even add on to that, when they're together, you can notice there's this kind of warmth when it comes to each other, and relaying it back to what we can experience. If you ever been on public transit, there's this weirdness when you're next to somebody and you can tell you're in their personal space. You can feel their body heat on you, and it's kind of weird. Yet, I would say when it comes to Hae Sung, when it comes to seeing him, we've already gone into what Nora possibly feels and the sort of back and forth she goes with. But when it comes to Hae Sung, who presents himself as having a very ordinary life, I would say that there's a sort of warmth that comes from Nora that kind of thaws him out a little bit. Like he's not just this Asian guy who feels like he's stuck on his path of becoming into a tech field or one of the STEMs as an engineer. That he isn't just stuck on this path of where he'll go from living with his parents to finding a woman and then getting married. That he can get out of this whole hamster wheel rat race thing and maybe actually get to live his life. And when you consider that Nora's family, from her father being a filmmaker, her mom being an artist, and her being a playwright, them all being creatives, and he's been stuck in this very rigid life and field, you can see that when it comes to warmth, when it comes to passion, when it comes to anything that makes life worth living and challenging in a way that isn't because of formulas, but because you actually have to do something that can have some real effect, and not a real effect in terms of, creating computers, creating code, but instead having effect that feels personal, that is memorable and not just in pursuit of money. This is what Nora gives him. It makes it so everything is just so richly complicated between them that while it can at sometimes annoy you, the whole idea of them going back and forth, especially because of something we'll go into later on when it comes to this review, at the same time, this almost feeling of relatability, especially since they reconnect through social media, and that's how they find each other. And I don't know about you, but there are some days when I'm definitely tempted to look into the what ifs of my life and see if I can turn that what if into something that I just unfortunately delayed for many years. Which leads to the on the fence topic, which is straight up Arthur. Arthur is a nice guy, but the way that things are set up for Arthur, unfortunately, when it comes to Arthur and Nora's relationship, it's the type of relationship where you see a lot of conveniences or a lot of logical thinking. There's not a lot of feeling there, which in some ways you can kind of appreciate. Yet at the same time, it creates what is the essential conflict? Is Nora going to stay with the man who she met at a writer's retreat, both were single, so they had sex. She moved in with him because rent in New York is expensive, and she married because she needed a green card? Or is she going to potentially be with the man who reminds her of home, who has this sort of manliness that she finds very attractive and gives her a sense of Korea that no Korean American or Koreans from Canada can give her, who allows her to reconnect with her mother's tongue? This creates the essential conflict, and unfortunately, Arthur's just in the middle, and he's not a bad guy. He's nice. He does say some things that are a little bit red flaggy, but not to the point where you want to label him as fetishizing Nora in any sort of way. I mean, unless you're like extremely sensitive. But that aside, it's at times you may wish that Arthur wasn't part of the picture so that you can get the love story that you may really want, and especially that seems to have been advertised, rather than there be this love triangle that someone's not going to end in a happy note with, because either Nora has to cheat on her husband or lose this man who has been built up through trailers, posters, and more as the love of her life, potentially. Which leads to the last topic, which is also an on-the-fence topic, and that's just, when it comes to this film, you're not sure what the end goal's supposed to be or if it's even building up to one. Yes, we're told there's been 24 years between Nora and Hae-sung meeting when they was 12 years old, and then 24 years later meeting as full-grown adults. That is the timeline. But as you go through the film and there's all these what-ifs and these ellipses in terms of conversations and moments, it makes it so when you finally reach the end, you're not left with something that feels like a definitive conclusion. Instead, you're left with a situation where it could be in another 12 years, things could shift again. As Nora grows up, as Hae-sung does as well, and I have to admit, it's a bit frustrating. And while I get, you can't have the relatability of, wanting to check in on a past flame or perhaps crush and want to see what happens without having this sort of awkwardness in terms of you meeting them, but it's bad timing. But I don't know. The film makes it very clear that whether you're talking about fate in terms of Yi-sung or Young-sun, where you keep meeting people in life over and over again until eventually things come together the way they're supposed to, or even if you want to look at it as the Chinese fairy with the red string, you can maybe see it as either Nora or Hae-sung plucking the string just to check on the other person and maybe try to draw them closer. Either way, the lack of having an answer at the end of this film as to who Nora's going to be with ultimately, and instead just knowing who she's going to be with for now, it leaves things on the kind of ellipsis that I guess is supposed to make you as frustrated as she may feel, as Hae-sung may feel, or even Arthur may feel. And I don't know, as a moviegoer, I like to have endings that feel like endings and not feel like potential setups for a movie or a spin-off series down the road. Not that there's been conversations about that, but again, I just want an ending that fits the word. Overall, while I'm clearly upset that Past Lives lacks a definitive ending, there is no question that the journey it takes you on will leave you feeling reflective and even contemplative about the opportunities you've missed or even had, and whether you can salvage the relationship or maybe you should leave it alone, and just the back and forth of all that could have been, could be, and whether you made the right decision or not.